Today, we're going to talk about some information that is necessary to get out to the public regarding the draft action plan for the 2023-2024 hurricanes, specifically Hurricane Idalia, Tropical Storm Debbie, and Hurricane Helene. This information is going to be presented over the course of the next 30 minutes with slides. And then we will open it up to questions, comments, concerns, anything that you all would like to add. So to start, let's talk a little bit about the timeline of where we've been and where we're going. So on December 20th, 2024, Congress approved a disaster appropriations bill. In this disaster appropriations bill, there were funds for HUD to award for CDBG disaster recovery allocations. These allocations went to many states and some local governments that were affected by tornadoes, hurricanes, wildfires, all natural disasters that occurred throughout 2023 and 2024. On January 16th, 2025, HUD released the Allocation Announcement Notice, otherwise known as AAN, and it was published with an applicability date of January 21st, 2025. What that January 21st date means is it started the timeline or the clock for DCA to complete the action plan and submit to HUD. In that allocation announcement notice, the state of Georgia was awarded $265,726,000 for long-term recovery from those hurricanes and tropical storms. Throughout the month of February 2025, DCA conducted 10 town hall style meetings to discuss the local needs. We came out into many of the affected communities and held in-person and virtual meetings to discuss remaining needs, to discuss projects, programs, the type of funds that we were going to receive, and many other things. At that same time period, we opened up unmet needs surveys, specifically 2 of them. One was for the general public. This was your business owners, your concerned citizens. This was homeowners and renters that were affected by the storm. And then we had a separate one for local governments. It is important to note that those surveys do still remain open. At this time, we are still accepting responses. However, we cannot guarantee that any responses will find their way into the current draft action plan. Throughout February and March of this year, we conducted the unmet needs, mitigation needs, and fair housing civil rights assessment while working with a procured vendor to draft the action plan. On March 19th, we published the draft action plan on our website for the required 30-day public comment period. This comment period remains open. Throughout the course of this week, beginning on April 1st and concluding on April 8th, we're conducting these public hearings. These hearings are in a hybrid format, meaning that you can attend in person, join via desktop or tablet, or also call in. Once these meetings are completed, again, the public comment period still remains open. This is not the only opportunity for you to make comments or ask questions about the draft action plan. On April 19th, the 30-day public comment period will end. At that point in time, we will compile all questions, comments, responses, concerns, and we will add them to the final document, which on April 21st, 2025, will be submitted to HUD. At that point in time, we play a waiting game. HUD has 45 days to review the draft action plan. Upon their review, they will either approve or reject it. We have a pretty good history of getting it approved. However, the situation in Washington is very fluid, so we will anticipate waiting the full 45 days to hear. So throughout the course of time, you'll hear a lot about most impacted and distressed, or what we label as MID. These MIDs are identified by HUD initially in the allocation announcement notice, and they are dependent upon a threshold of unmet needs that are remaining after FEMA, SBA, USDA, and all your other sources of short-term recovery have left. HUD identified 20 most impacted and distressed counties or zip codes in the allocation announcement notice. These are identified on the screen as HUD identified MIDs. Throughout the course of developing the action plan and completing the unmet needs assessment, the state identified 24 additional communities, so this could be a single zip code or an entire county, that met the HUD threshold. And so those are listed on your screen as state identified MIDs. Because the 24 identified areas did meet the original HUD threshold, we decided as the state to submit a HUD MID expansion request. On March 7th, we submitted a formal request to HUD and asked them to expand their designation from the original 20 counties to include the additional 24 counties. What we will be doing is waiting for their identification. However, we wanted to ensure that these communities were included in the action plan to be submitted. So right now, we are waiting on HUD's review. If they approve the request, then that request will allow all 44 counties to be eligible to use at least 80% of the total allocation of CDBG-DR funds. If that request is denied, we do intend to keep these 24 areas as state identified MIDs, and then they will be eligible for up to 20% of the total allocation. Very important to note, we have not received a response from HUD as of yet. So let's take a look at what the unmet needs assessment found. So in general, we looked at housing, infrastructure, economic revitalization, and mitigation throughout the assessment. Not surprisingly, housing accounted for the majority of the unmet needs in the state of Georgia after Hurricane Idalia, Tropical Storm Barry, and Hurricane Helene. It approximately was 76% of the remaining unmet need that we calculated, totaling over $1.1 billion. And yes, that is billion with a B. Infrastructure accounted for approximately 12% of that remaining unmet need, with just about $180 million in remaining need. Economic revitalization also accounted for approximately 12%, with just under $179 million. Very, very, very important to note, all percentages and dollar amounts are estimates right now. They are based on the best available data we had at the time of publishing and are subject to change. We understand that we are consistently seeing additional FEMA applications for public assistance be approved. We're still seeing FEMA applications for individual assistance being approved. This will change the amounts that we see. So how did we propose to spend the $265 million? Well, what you see now is the proposed budget in the current draft action plan. For administration, there's a little over $13 million allocated. Planning, $3.5 million. Housing, our largest chunk of money, is going to be almost $189 million. Infrastructure will be $50 million, and HMDP match is $10 million. What we're going to do is go over those categories in just a second, and then we're going to talk individually about each program and what you can expect to see throughout that. It is very, very important to note that there are mitigation set-aside funds that are required by HUD. We had two options when preparing what to do with those mitigation set-aside funds. The first was we could do standalone mitigation or resilience type projects, or the second option was that we could incorporate those mitigation funds into the programs we already plan to run. We did choose option 2 to allow those mitigation funds to go as far as possible. So they will be incorporated throughout the housing, infrastructure, and HMGP match programs. That is to say, a good example of how we'll incorporate some of those funds is in the housing programs. Every home rehabilitated or reconstructed in a couple of the programs will receive a fortified roof. This fortified roof is a mitigation measure that helps prevent additional damage in future storms by providing additional protections against hurricane or tornado strength winds. So the categories. Administration is exactly what you think it is. It's the administration of the programs. So DCA will use these funds to support the general oversight of the award. This could be the staff salaries for the people in the disaster recovery unit that you interact with. This can be overhead. This can be training, both on a subrecipient local government level, as well as internal for the staff we work with. It can include vendor management. We will be hiring vendors to do several aspects of program implementation and staff augmentation. For planning funds, we are planning to partner with the Georgia Emergency Management and Homeland Security Agency, otherwise known as GEMA, to create disaster recovery and redevelopment plans. They're known as DRRPs, with affected local governments. And there are some limited funds for local government planning needs. Housing, we will be operating 3 individual programs. There will be a single-family homeowner rehabilitation and reconstruction program, otherwise known as HRRP. There will be an affordable rental rehabilitation program, otherwise known as ARRP, and an affordable rental housing development program. For infrastructure, we'll be doing a competitive application cycle for local governments to apply for public infrastructure needs. These are your water sewer projects, your stormwater projects, your bridges. We've also done in previous allocations many communication style projects. There is a lot of options available under the infrastructure. And then finally, we have the HMGP match. HMGP match is Hazard Mitigation Grant Program. This is a program that is funded by FEMA, and applications are due through GEMA in order for local governments to apply. There is a 25% match requirement for the local governments. We will be assisting with that match. So let's talk about the individual programs. So in planning, as I said, there's $3.5 million available. The eligible activity and national objective. These are things that are required by HUD for most, if not all, programs. Every program must have an eligible activity. For this one, it's planning. In this case, a national objective is not applicable. However, we do have to talk about the accomplishments. What do we plan to achieve with these $3.5 million? We plan on up to 40 planning documents. This will be inclusive of the DRRPs that GEMA will do and the potential for local governments to receive separate funding for additional types of plans. In the maximum award area for GEMA, we have not determined what the maximum award will be, simply because we don't know how many communities will still be in need of a DRRP. Other awards to local governments will be limited to $250,000 per award. The way that we plan to implement this program is state-run. We're going to work with GEMA to do the DRRPs, and then we're also going to have local government subrecipients. It is very, very important to note that GEMA will work directly with the HUD identified and state identified mid communities in doing the DRRP. So our next program, we start on the housing programs. So the homeowner rehabilitation and reconstruction program has a proposed budget of just under $93 million. There are some eligible activities here: rehabilitation, construction of housing. There are other eligible activities, but those are the primary ones. Our national objective here is low to moderate income and urgent need. So low to moderate income is those household incomes at 80% or less of the area median income for your particular area. The definition of urgent need in this circumstance is those household incomes rising to 81 to 120% of the area median income for your area. So we are able to serve two separate categories. Our projected accomplishments, we think we should be able to do approximately 400 homes. Maximum awards. For rehabilitation, we have set the maximum award at $100,000, and currently for reconstruction, it is at about $280,000. That number is clearly subject to change based upon the rising costs of materials and construction costs in general. What I will say is I do not want anybody to look at that rehabilitation amount and say, oh, well, I won't qualify because I know it's going to cost more than $100,000 to fix my house. We are saying that homes that have $100,000 of remaining unmet need or less are eligible for rehabilitation. If we were able to determine that a rehab would cost more, we would discuss the possibility of reconstruction. You are not eliminated from consideration simply because a rehab may cost more than $100,000. The way we plan to implement this is that it will be run by DCA with the use of what we call a prime vendor. The prime vendor will come in, they will be a procured vendor using state procurement rules. They will come in and they will start with marketing and outreach, and they will continue all the way through construction. Marketing and outreach is going to be conducted in your communities by this vendor, by DCA, and it will attempt to attract the people that need the assistance. We're going to be going to your local churches, your local community centers. We may send flyers home in your children's school book bags. We want people to know that the program is available and out there. From there, we will have the vendor conducting intakes and homeowner assessments, and then walking through the construction process with those homeowners that are approved for assistance. I will say, you're going to hear me say this a lot over the next couple of slides. Policies and procedures will be available later. They are currently under review, and at this point in time, we anticipate being able to release them in early summer. So our next housing program is our affordable rental rehabilitation program. There is a proposed budget of just over $76 million. For this particular housing program, the only eligible activity is rehabilitation. That being said, there are reasons why we chose rehabilitation specifically. We do anticipate 300 housing units being able to be assisted. And the national objective is only low to moderate income. Therefore, it will be the 80% or less area median income for your area. Because we chose only rehabilitation as an eligible activity here, we are limiting the maximum award to slightly more at $125,000 per housing unit. Again, the implementation is going to be similar to the HRRP. It will be state run at DCA with the use of that vendor. The process will be exactly the same, from marketing and outreach to landlords, to intake, to construction. And policies and procedures will be available later. So our final housing program is our affordable rental housing development program. We proposed a budget of about $20 million for this, with eligible activities being the rehabilitation and construction of new housing. We project to be able to build about 500 housing units. The national objectives are currently set to low to moderate income and urgent need with that same definition. 80% or less of AMI for low to moderate income and 81 to 120% for urgent needs. The maximum award for this particular program is going to be $5 million per development. That being said, it is important to note that these are low interest loans provided to the developers. Those loans will be repaid, and if they are repaid while CDBG-DR is still within its grant agreement with HUD, those funds will be re-put into the other housing programs. The implementation for this is 100% state run. There will be no use of a vendor. We will, however, likely partner with our low income housing tax credit people at DCA to ensure that we get the most bang for our buck. And again, policies and procedures will be available at a later date. So then we have our infrastructure program. So the proposed budget, as indicated earlier, is $50 million. The eligible activity is public facilities and improvements. Projected accomplishments, we estimate about 4,500 individuals. This may seem really high. That being said, in infrastructure, we look at and calculate who is served in a different way than we do individual housing programs. The national objectives will again be low to moderate income and urgent need based upon target areas. Now, for maximum awards, there is no current maximum for a HUD identified MID. Remember, this is those original 20 counties that HUD identified in the allocation announcement notice. The way the draft action plan is published right now, while we are waiting for that HUD MID expansion request approval or denial, is that $5 million will be the maximum award for a state identified MID. That was the additional 24 counties. If our request to HUD is approved, then there will be no maximum for any of those counties. The implementation will be local government subrecipients. They know how to do infrastructure. We're going to let them do the infrastructure. Other important notes, policies and procedures will be available later. Okay. So then we have the HMGP match program. This is that hazard mitigation grant program. The proposed budget for this program is $10 million. The eligible activity is payment of the non-federal share. The national objective for this will again only be low to moderate income. That is at 80% or below area median income. Our proposed accomplishment is approximately 400 individuals. That is very dependent upon which projects are chosen for funding. The maximum award would be up to 15% of the required governmental match. Remember, I said that there's a 25% match required. DCA and the CDBG-DR program will fund up to 15% of that match. It may not be 15% completely. It may be less. It will not be more. And the implementation for this is state run. We will partner with GMA to ensure that everyone that submits an HMGP match application understands what the requirements are to get those funds. And finally, this is the last time you have to hear me say it, policies and procedures will be available later. So some final thoughts to wrap up. Public comment period remains open. It will remain open until April 19th. All comments, all questions, all responses that are received will be summarized and put into the draft action plan that will be submitted to HUD. In an effort to ensure that people who were unable to attend or who maybe want to be able to revisit these public hearings, a recording of at least one of these hearings will be available on the CDBG-DR website along with this PowerPoint no later than April 10th. This will allow for you to review the PowerPoint, to review the recording of the hearing so you can actually hear the discussion that was had prior to April 19th when all comments are due. This is not your last opportunity. please take time to review the action plan, which is available on the website, and send us your comments. We absolutely want to hear from you. And in that vein, any and all updates regarding this allocation, the 2023-2024 hurricane allocation, as well as really any CDBG-DR allocation we currently have, are prominently displayed on the CDBG-DR website. When this presentation is available, the link below will be live and will take you directly to that page. But I do think it's important to let you know that you can get to this page by going to dca.georgia.gov and clicking on the icon labeled disaster recovery from the homepage. And with that, I will open it up for any and all questions or comments.
I'm in the here with you.
We can meet.
Yeah,
Did recognize you. Thank you for coming.
yeah, I was like, I couldn't go to the one yesterday, I'm like, but if it's no one near, because Augusta is 3 hours from there, so this is better for me.
Okay.
So I was able to come. One question I have, cause I went to something and they were talking about these. So, this is just like for county government, like county, city government, so like or nonprofit, like specifically who can apply?
No. Okay, so let me go back to
Okay, I missed
a
that.
little bit about the program.
Yeah, okay.
So planning.
Okay,
Planning is going to be a twofold thing.
okay,
So DTA is going to work with GMA who will then go to the local government and do these plans called disaster recovery and redevelopment plans, called DRRP. That is one area where, yes, it is strictly to the local governments that agree to work with GMA on those. There will be some limited funds available to certain local governments for planning purposes. We have not made a determination yet of what types of plans will be eligible for those funds. That's what's going to come out hopefully by summer. Okay. Then we have 3 separate housing programs. You have the HRRP, the ARRP. Those 2 programs will be individual applications.
okay,
So a homeowner will be able to come in and apply to have their house repaired or reconstructed. And MHUs, so mobile homes, manufactured housing, that is eligible as well.
okay,
Okay, we are not limiting it to stick built. So they'll be able to apply individually. The local government will not be in play on the application. That is out codes and following all the rules, yes, but not for the application.
okay.
And then for the ARRP, landlords will be able to apply individually as well.
Tell me one more time what the name of the one work for the mobile homes, because I know that's very big thing in our area. A lot of people with mobile homes are denied through their insurance for repairs. So what's the name of those programs one more time?
The homeowner rehabilitation and reconstruction program.
That's always a concern because I'm gonna be in the county, we're a smaller government. I know sometimes it's always a concern that we'll be able to actually manage, being allocated money for things like this. So it's great to know that they can apply individually, so we don't have to worry about that being an issue.
Absolutely. And that is something that we did take into consideration when making that determination, is that so if we go back and we look at the most impacted and distressed communities that are listed here, we understand that some of them, so say for example, Columbia County may have the capacity to be able to run a program. But as you're saying, someplace like San Hill may not, and we certainly don't want to burden the local communities and not be able to make the program successful, which is why we chose to go state run. We find it to be more efficient and allow those individual applications to come in. So,
And for the, when you're for the planning, when you work with GEMA, do they also, like, because one of the big things in our area is we don't have any shelters. So we're looking into like trying to turn one of our county buildings into like a shelter people can come to when we have to, but I think you have to have certain things like generators and things like that. So we're working on like maybe putting together a plan on how we can better prepare for storms. And there's gonna be an aspect of this actually having like a place where people can shelter in place and things like that.
Right.
So could that be a part of the?
That may be.
Okay.
What I would suggest is that we have a local government, survey that is still open
Okay.
because we are still utilizing that information as we develop the program design for these programs.
Okay.
It's available on the website. I would suggest filling that out and kind of giving us that heads up that that's the type of planning product you're looking for, because that's gonna help us, those different results are gonna help us guide those decisions that we make on what type of plan. Now, I will say that you should absolutely speak with GEMA about the hazard mitigation grant program, as far as shelters and things are going. So, because they'll be able to give you more information on what would be eligible for that specific, program, because we are only covering for that HMGP hazard mitigation grant program, we're only covering the local match, part of the local match.
Oh, match, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then,
And so the other thing too is the infrastructure program. The
Yes.
infrastructure program is the one that will go through the local government. There'll be
Okay.
a competitive application cycle that opens up, and governments we'll be doing kind of meetings like this, very similar.
okay,
Except that it's gonna be geared towards those communities that want to apply for the infrastructure program, to kind of go over what type of projects they can submit, what the eligibility requirements are, what scoring will look like, and things like that, and that'll probably be later in the early fall.
okay, I'll be able to look it up. Like, do y'all have like an email list or something like that, that kind of blast out these meetings for?
Collecting that information, yes.
Okay.
So, we did have an email blast that went through constant contact, but we recently moved into a new system.
Okay.
So we are recollecting.
Okay.
So basically, if you do the survey,
Okay.
you're automatically added to
Oh, okay,
the blast list.
good deal. And so I know with the last grant you were talking about for the governments, with the infrastructure, and it said, I saw on there about public facilities. So
Public facilities are an eligible activity, and as we get into that program design, we start holding those meetings with the community, we're gonna talk more about what exactly.
Okay. That was kind of my things I was thinking. I'm like, if we're trying to do a shelter and we do need some of the things for it, maybe we can apply for this as well without going.
It's very
facilities, that we have. Okay. This was all. I think that's all the questions I have. I appreciate you.
Do we have any questions online?
Yes, good morning, Commissioner Bradshaw from Telfair County. I have a question. With our county being small, rural county, we don't have the staffing. Do you all offer like technical assistance? Because we don't have anyone that could actually, that would actually know how to submit this. Do you all provide technical assistance, or is this something that we would have to work with someone else on?
So we do provide technical assistance, throughout the application process. And what we often suggest as we, in that technical assistance is partnering with a grant administrator. And oftentimes people or smaller communities will use our regional commission.
Regional commission, right? Okay. Thank you.
Or you are also able to procure for an individual grant administrator as well. But we do provide technical assistance, and those offers will go out to all of the eligible communities, probably by early summer.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Yeah, I was like, when I leave here, I'm gonna call Be like, hey, I just, can you
Give me a heads up.
yeah, they always like, oh, here's the hope again. I'm like, what do you got for us? We won't.
So it is something important to note for everyone as well, is that if you intend to utilize an individual grant administrator, DCA does have a requirement that that procurement is done prior to your application being submitted. If you partner with a regional commission, because they are a quasi-governmental agency for the state of Georgia, you are not required to procure. You can simply enter into a contract. Any additional questions online? And I put my contact information up on the screen. Please feel free to take this information down. I respond to every phone call and every email. All I ask is that a little bit of grace be given because I am traveling.